For the purpose of the discussion of budget, it is time for the invocation and the pledges.
Heavenly Father, we are here again to conduct business of the Van Alstine City Council. We ask for your guidance to give us the knowledge, the wisdom, and the ability to carry out our duties as council and in a way that you see fit. We ask you continue to bless our community. We thank you, Lord, for protecting our first responders, giving them ability to take care of us. We thank you, Lord, for protecting our citizens. We ask that you can hopefully get this COVID out of the way. We're getting tired of it, Lord. We ask all this in your Son's name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the United States, one state, under God, one indivisible.
It brings us to item 4 on our agenda, discussion regarding the fiscal year 2020-2021 City of Van Alstine budget. Mr. Jones.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you all coming back here again this evening. I think the intent tonight is to spend time on the general fund budget. We'll do that, but we had some unfinished business in regards to the utility fund. We heard you, we made a minor revision to that fund, and I've asked Mr. McManus to come back and present that change to you folks so you have an understanding of what's proposed.
Thank you, Lane. As you recall, we have the slides on the screen, but this packet here are basically the 4 slides that have changed from the previous budget that you've seen. This was the original submittal, showed a 4% increase in the base rate and the consumption rates going forward. We had a request to increase the consumption rates and takes more pressure off of the base rate, and you can see that by taking the base consumption rate from $3.60 to $3.80 per 1,000 gallons, that the base rate now will show about a 1% increase, and then the consumption rate of 5,000 still stays at 4%, and it stays at 4% throughout. So like you said, it's a balloon that you need to have this much air in it, and you push on the consumption side, or you push on the rate side. You got one layer, you're going to get it. So that's the modification based on that. The next 2 slides show the comparison with the surrounding cities and where our rates sit. Both of them, we have both that and the alternate. So you kind of see where we sit with all the cities on the water rate, and then the next one's the sewer rate, and then the total combined bill. Available for any questions if you have.
So I sat with these guys and tried to help with some of the numbers. It's about a 6% difference raise on the consumption rate for under 10,000. Again, that's the majority of the users, the ones that have meters, is under 10,000. But this starts with the numbers. This, for these 2 guys, was not too much risk in raising the consumption rather than the base, and it keeps the base flat from where it is, so there is no base increase essentially. It's like 8 cents or something like that. It's not significant at all. But it does, for a year, for us to be able to see what this looks like, start the process where we can start possibly lowering the base rate and increasing the consumption rate across the board for all users. So we thought this was pretty fair in the sense of putting it together and starting that process now, an overall 1% increase. So it's not even hardly any increase at all in the overall water bill. So
Not to take action, but we could get a feeling from everyone.
To me, this looks like, I mean, I hate that we have to do anything, I understand that we do, but that's a significant jump for this first 5,000 gallon people, which we're talking about. A lot of our elderly community, one person, this is gonna hurt them a lot. That's a big jump. That's a 45% jump, not, and a quarter jump to the next bracket.
it's a 15.
They're currently at 345.
Yeah, and then,
We want three.
I think at the bottom one, 380, yeah.
That's a huge jump. And I'm just thinking of those that are, you know, we already see all the issues with our, you know, the water bills and all that, for those people that have one or two people in the house, they're gonna get hit the hardest. We're not making it better for them, we're making it worse for them. And it's not me, I'm sorry, I didn't get that spreadsheet until like a couple hours ago, and I'm just slammed at work, but that's why I wanted to play with those numbers to see, because I think we need to focus away from this first group maybe, and dig it out a little bit more against, you know, the others to try to make it a little bit easier.
The base rates for the others are so high that it's almost impossible to do that. And all I see online is, hey, I didn't use any water and I'm still now gonna pay more. And so if you didn't use any water, you're not gonna pay more, you're gonna pay the same. If you use water,
I heard they use the water, but this bulk of this whole little first section here is, we are talking about it being our seniors and our, you know, one person households, two people that don't use a ton of water. And you're right, if they don't use it, well, the bill's not gonna be higher, but, you know, still. That's a big increase for that one bracket.
It's cheaper than what it would have been, with the base rate going up.
Well, it's less than every other city.
What?
It's less than every other city in comparison.
The consumption is not the base.
Right,
Well, we didn't touch the base on this one.
right.
It just moved up a little bit based on the EDP to 1,600 or 16,000 or 16 million or whatever the number was, 160 million gallons. There you go, I got it right.
But the goal is to be able to lower the base rate eventually.
And you gotta make some sort of sacrifice and compromise to even get to that point, and that was the whole thinking here was, if we could go a year where this hits the budget and it works, then maybe next year we can start to lower the base rate and just keep in line with that, ability to, increase the variable rate a little bit, and then eventually we're back in line with everybody else on the base rate, and then now we have a lower bill overall, because more people, that happens with the change, you get more water, more hookups, more meters, all that stuff happens. But, I don't know, we just played with the numbers and we felt like that was a decent enough raise on consumption across the board. Because it changes it across the board for every user, 5,000, 10,000, you know, and it was small enough to probably not change the water bill all that much for people that are using the same amount of water, but not risky enough for the city for us to be sitting in May or June going, crap, we are way behind on the budget to hit it because we had a wet season or something along those lines.
Other comments or questions?
I'd just like to point out, last year, we, basically approved, this budget with no increase. And we were waiting on a functional cost study, I believe, was gonna come back and you were gonna adjust it upwards, which we didn't. So we kind of need to do something this year because we completed all of our reserve.
Right. No, I get that part, I just hate that it's, I mean, if you look across the board there, which group is getting the brunt of it?
If you look at like Tommy, their base rate is close to ours, but their consumption rate is very high. A lot higher than ours. Some of the bigger cities can do better, but it doesn't look all that off.
But at least this way, people that say, hey, I didn't turn on the water at all, their billing ain't going up. Because it'll stay relatively the exact same, maybe 10 cents, 15 cents difference compared to 4% difference.
Mr. Mayor, we do not require a vote, but we would like a pulse so that we can go out and inform community
Okay,
as to what we're doing, but it doesn't require a vote that we're ready to approve the budget as a whole. We,
it will require a vote at some point.
yeah,
Next week.
water is very sensitive. I'm not seeing all the same feedback that all of you have seen on it, and I'm very conscious of the fact that our base rate looks disproportionate, and we're going to look into that. I can't get it all done. You know, the level of research is going to take a little time, but we will examine it. Right now, base rate is our infrastructure payment. You know, that's the wastewater treatment plant, all the sewer lines that are in the ground and the people that take care of it. And, you know, water and sewer is a very expensive portion of what the city does, and revenue does not cover the operating costs, and that's the problem. It came into focus this year when we had COVID, which was much like a tornado rolling through town and business shut down. As you move that dial up to the right to consumption, especially in a town of our size, you take on greater risk. The further you go to consumption, the greater the risk. Last April, it rained, and the average consumer citywide used 3,600 gallons. We could not have paid what we needed to pay for at that point. So, you know, we've had several wet years. It's really dry, consumption is great, but you have to understand, where you go to consumption, these other cities that have lower base rates have consumption rates that some of them are $5, $6, you know, and we're at $3.80 in our proposal. So I'm aware of it. We're going to examine it very closely, but I felt after working with Lynn and talking to a few of you that we had, without an increase last year, this was probably the most modest increase we could take and still start to meet the goals and objectives that have been told to us by our financial advisors, by our auditors. We have to build a reserve. We can't continue to operate in a deficit. And I guess we need to look at how to spread that out. I don't have all those answers yet, but we'll get them. And then, you know, we'll examine it. We're going to rekindle the water rate study, but I can tell you, I've talked to other people that say your water rates aren't where they should be higher. I don't want to go there. I want to do what I've done in this year's budget, which is there's no fat in our budgets. You're going to see that tonight. We have whittled them down to needs, not wants. And we're doing what we need to do to operate, to make this all work.
Okay, thanks for your comments. What, just a rough estimate, what percentage of our operating costs on the water and sewer side is being paid by water and sewer income?
Well,
Are we at 80%, 90%?
probably 90%.
So we are still taking money out of the general fund.
No, we are not taking money out
We're
of
taking
it.
it out of the
We
reserve.
were operating at a deficit, so,
If we did not have a reserve, we would be
That's
taking it out of the general fund.
now we've taken steps, we made a big improvement. Put a dent in that deficit, we still have a deficit, but we whittled it down about 250,000 last year. We think we can come very close to that again this year, so we're making progress.
We're talking
We have
about that side. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Right.
But we have to start building a cash reserve.
Mr. Mayor, the income on the water and sewer fund, up there, 93% of the water fund's done by rates and 83% of the sewer fund. Again, the 83% of the sewer fund is a little disproportionate because the solid waste the contract is in the sanitary sewer project. So,
Okay. I appreciate that. My question was more, if you look at the operating expenses, how much, if we were just treating this as a standalone budget, and we sort of do, how much of the money does it cost to operate water and sewer comes from the fees we collect on water and sewer? And it sounds like we're close, but we're still taking money out of the reserve, we're still running a deficit.
That's correct.
Thanks.
We're getting there, we're getting close.
We may have said this last time, but what percentage of our community does fall under this 5,000?
I'm sorry?
The percentage of our community that falls under that 5,000 gallon ring?
is about 60% is 5,000 or less.
Of our 1,800,
1,850.
yeah, 50 customers, about 932 of them are in that first tier. Sorry. I tried, that's kind of.
Well, you had that here.
I may be off by one child, but close.
I appreciate the philosophy of trying to keep the base rate low. That is, for our consumers, that is beyond their control. They can control their consumption.
Right.
It hurts, they can use less water.
Understood.
Base rate as it is. So I appreciate that philosophy, that understanding the rest. Okay, any other comments or questions on water sewer rates before we move to other departments? Yes, sir.
With this revision, are you comfortable with the risk?
I am, I mean, I don't like any risk in municipal management because, we had a near miss this year. It turned out fine, which was good, but I'm comfortable that we can do what we say we're gonna do with the revenue that's there.
We can do it, but we're comfortable with it.
I'm never comfortable
Can't
completely.
put this up on our citizens either right now.
Yeah,
Tough time for everybody.
never completely comfortable. I mean, we've tried to be very modest in estimating revenues as well as expenditures. And my hope is that we're wrong on revenue and it turns out to be better, than we anticipate. But all that's dependent on weather and all those other things.
Molly, I understand we do not have a reserve, and the key is to build that reserve up and
Yes,
have that reserve. Because without that reserve, which we currently don't have, a small nuisance becomes a catastrophe. So all the water lines a couple of years ago, we had blow up and boil orders and everything else. It only takes instead of having 5 of those each year reserved down, it only takes 1. And then you're shot for the rest of the year. So if we can make it work and not have a catastrophe,
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to the general fund.
Okay, I've put before all of you a rather intimidating, sizable package, and I will tell you, we're going to go through this pretty quickly. It's not my intention to go line item by line item. You each provided that. If you have a question on the line item, you're welcome to ask or send me an email and we'll address it. But you have all the experts here that go through individual budgets, and I've met with all of them twice. But I'll tell you, trying to remember every line item is almost impossible. That's why they're here. That said, slide 1 is a thank you. You're very blessed to have a group of people that work extremely hard and know their business. I mean, they understand the vision, they understand that these are interesting times and we have to be conservative. And it didn't take any arm wrenching to get this done. But these people work very hard to give you what you're going to see tonight. The general fund budget has revenues in excess of expenditures of 28,068.67. So we have a balanced budget. This will maintain revenues for the fund as recommended by our auditors, and it was all built using certified preliminary property values. We have yet to receive the final certified property values. So we had to use the next best thing. It's my feeling that when we do get final property values, that number of 28,000 may go up a little bit. And I've got a long list of how to spend it already, and we'll do budget amendments if that's meaningful. Assessed valuations on both new property and existing property went up 13.45%. And our rolls improved by almost $40 million, $39,961,000, which is due to new development in Van Alstyne, as well as the county tax assessor reevaluating properties that are there. Sales tax collections continues to realize strong growth despite COVID-19 and its impacts on business. The city is very fortunate to have a very diversified portfolio of sales tax payers. So we're not dependent on traditional brick and mortar retail for our sales tax generation. And our consumer quickly migrated from walking into a store or driving down the road to a big box in perhaps another city to online shopping. We've seen 300% increases in online shopping take place, and that translates into more revenue for the city. So the budget does reflect that. The next slide shows a graph of property valuations. Again, this is new property and reevaluations, if you will, went from 297 million to 337 million. And our sales tax collections were budgeted at $953,750 for the year this year, but we've already collected that this year. We've got a couple months to go, so that number is going to go up. We budgeted next year at $1,190,000. That may be conservative based on what we have, but we did have an anomaly in our sales tax collections this last month where a large taxpayer was audited and they owed back sales tax, and we received a little infusion of capital into our sales tax, so that has to be adjusted for as you think forward. But sales tax collections is going very, very well here. Next slide is our budget. I'm only going to focus on 2019-20 versus 2021. Revenue last year was planned at $6,259,000. This year is planned at $5,560,000. It went down, so the logical question is why, if all those other things are so favorable? It's because we had almost $700,000 in grant revenue that we anticipated. And this year, we have yet to receive, but hope to get for a reimbursement on the shared use path up by the high school that we're not having next year. So that's why the adjustment. So getting that correct. Expenses, this year we're at $5,532,000, so we have that positive to budget of $28,068. General fund key components, and I'm not going to steal the thunder from those that are in the room, but we're going to add a chief financial officer to our city this year. So we're in the process of employing a code compliance officer. We're going to employ 3 new firefighters, 1 part-time library staff. Police department will get new body and car cameras. We're going to buy a new mower for parks, and we're going to buy 12 park benches in keeping with the parks master plan guidance. And we have the expenditure will show up for the downtown park in next year's budget, but the revenue will be taken this year. So we know it, but that's been accommodated for. And then we'll have a little over $200,000 that you've already approved for the shared use path that will connect Georgetown to Forest Lawn Park. What's that mean as far as the tax rate? It stays flat. We were at 0.584456, and we're going to be at 0.584456 going forward. So no impact. Very, very proud to say, 4th year in a row that we've been able to either reduce it or hold it steady despite what's happening around us. We're tracking in the right direction here. Okay, now with that said, just for the sake of your knowledge, there's been some language changes to how property taxes, the tax rate that we can charge are calculated. And I asked Jennifer, and I sat through 3 days worth of training seminars on all of it, and I still don't trust to remember all the language again, but she's captured it, so she's going to cover this for you.
Okay, so no change here at least. The 2 components that make up your total property tax rate are the maintenance and operations portion, which just provides funding for maintenance and operations, and then interest and sinking, which ensures that we have the property tax revenue to pay our tax supported debt. The big changes, we have had the effective tax rate for so long, but it is now termed the no new revenue tax rate. So just like the effective rate, it's a tax rate that gives the city the same amount of revenue that it had in the previous year. The rollback rate is now termed the voter approval rate. Historically, the rollback rate is a rate that gives the city the same amount of revenue it had in the previous year plus 8%. The change with the voter approval rate is the growth on that rate is 3.5% now. So we can't go all the way up to 8%. We're limited to 3.5. Another new component to the rate is the de minimis rate. So cities with a population of 30,000 or less can calculate this rate. And it it's a rate that would impose $500,000 of property taxes when applied to the city's current total value. Nope, I'm going too fast. So here are all of our rates. We have the no new revenue tax rate, which is a 0.52, our voter approval rate, which is 0.57, and the de minimis rate is 0.76. And like Lane said, we are proposing to keep our rate flat at 0.584456. You might notice, if you remember from years past, we kind of have to worry about the possibility of an election, maybe voters petitioning to have an election. And because we're under 30,000 population and we qualify to calculate that de minimis rate, as long as we don't go 8% above the no new revenue tax rate, and we stay below the de minimis rate, there's no possibility of an election. We don't have to automatically call an election, and the voters cannot petition for one if we stay at 5.58.
Questions? And this is obviously assuming increase in property values.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't really know what that number is, but we can make it.
Well, we know we have about a 98% accuracy factor from a certified preliminary. I expect it to go up slightly, I don't expect it to go down. So it's good to be wrong that way and it's still worked out. Thank you. Would you go on the next one? City administration, you have, we're gonna go in order of your report. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the line items, but I'm going to do kind of the high level. The revenue reflects both property tax and sales tax growth as we've shown to you already. We're also standing up this City Development Services Department, which is where engineering, planning, permitting, all that stands. So we have pulled all of those line items out of the administration budget and we've set it up as its own operating entity. And Amy is providing oversight of that department. That will give us greater visibility, if you will, as to the costs associated with all of those different entities. That's a very fast growing portion of what we're doing. It's kind of the first step in the process of taking that forward. So that's happening. We'll have a chief financial officer to the administrative budget. And this budget also reflects a full year of community development fee collection. So we'll add about $270,000, as I recall, to that budget that we have, and we can start to make sound decisions as to where we're going. So those are the major bullet points on the administrative budget. So now Jamie's turn. Development services.
All right. As Lane just said, there is myself, obviously street planner, we've got Kristen, the permit tech, and then soon to be a code compliance officer. So the code compliance officer will be under development services, but obviously still work with the police and courts as they need to for ticketing and citations, but they have a little bit more leeway when they're not under the police. So we want, them to get out and become friendly with the different neighborhoods and with the neighbors, and they can attend neighborhood meetings and, so they'll be available for those kind of things, and then enforcing our codes. And then the non-city team, of course, we have Lynn here to my right and his team, and health inspections, so far we only have Grayson County. I guess at some point we can have some in Collin, but right now Grayson. Building official, I'm not sure you'll might know Ty, but Bureau Veritas, and then building, fire, and sign plans review, Bureau Veritas does. And I know we just updated our sign ordinance. I had somebody just call today in the ETJ, and that reminded me that we get to do signs in the ETJ too. So that will bring us some revenue, but also we can help make those signs look nicer too. So, all right, I guess next, Jennifer.
Before we do that, can we go back to that last slide? So, I know McManus and Johnson perform multiple functions, including inspections.
Mm-hmm.
Are we tracking inspections as revenue and expenses separately than we are the engineering portion of that?
Yes.
That is not even there. So-
Yes.
It's a separate invoice that has revenue collected from the developers and then my expenses of my inspectors and my engineers that support that. So
Okay,
there's a separate invoice every month that it's the developer generated revenue and then what it costs,
yeah,
what it costs to support that effort.
okay. I wouldn't want to see that all lumped together, because you might be tempted to look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of money for city engineering. Well, I guess part of it is inspection,
Absolutely.
getting revenue to offset that portion.
And that's part of the motivation in doing this, so we can drill down further.
Great, thanks.
Okay. All right, so I was hired in January 2020. And then Kristen, we moved out to the sewer plant, and she's out there, so she is in my office. The code compliance officer should be filled this year. They are the person that we're in the process of hiring this month is state licensed, and so he has a state license and a certified code enforcement officer. So, but we're going to call him a code compliance officer. We don't want to sound as harsh, but he actually is a certified code enforcement officer. So I think that will help the budget by us being able to ensure that people are paying their building fees and, following the rules too. And then this year, I think Kristen plans on getting her permit tech certification, and I'll continue on with my AICP certification, planner tech and code, so we'll all be maintaining our certifications. So I think that helps us look good by having everyone certified. I guess that's really it for me. I get to go first, so. But y'all, I'm always happy to answer any questions, not just about budget, but about projects, of course.
I'm glad to see us breaking this out. The growing part, and
I didn't know it was doing that.
we want to be sure we are collecting fees commensurate with the service we're providing in this specific area. Anybody else, comments, questions for development services?
All right, on to the library.
Good evening. I've got really simplified. We're going to take a bird's eye look, and a summary of the library's budgets this year is we propose a budget which reflects an increase in our revenues of 55% and a 10% increase in expenses. While on the surface that sounds like, wow, the library is going to bring in 55% more dollars. All of that, 100% of that 55% is projected grant revenue. And when you back out items or look at specifically items that are under my control specifically, and that would be faxes, print, and our support from Grayson County. Those are going to stay exactly the same, and fine revenue will actually drop probably about 30%. So that takes care of our revenue. It's pretty short. Expenses for the library arise from both operating and salary. Our operation costs will show a net increase of $9,850. Again, when you put something in as revenue, you've got to take it out as expense. And actually, I was able to present an operating budget of negative $550. So everything, tweaked a little here and tweaked a little there, and was actually able to come in $550 less than last year. If that makes sense to everybody. If we want to take a closer look at the few items that I did increase, what you'll be getting for those modest increases is a door counter, a camera system. The grant money that I had to build in to offset the income is Christmastown usually runs about $400 for us. And then we're still I had to build in a little bit of money for, we're still trying to have our 2020 celebration. It was our 50th birthday this year. And I don't know, I had planned for confetti canyons, so that's why that's built into the budget. Whether or not we'll get to do that, I'm not sure, but it has to be put in the budget if we're going to buy them. Our grant purchases, there's our $10,000 in a proposed grant that we hope to win for digitization of our archival records. The remainder of this year's budget looks at staffing completes our two-step raise process, which initiated in FY 1920. And then, of course, an addition of a part-time staff person that will start in February or January of 2021. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Museum budget's pretty easy to read, the utilities, the insurance, lights, and a little bit of building maintenance, but nothing beyond that. Next will be our fire department.
Evening, Mayor, Council. We'll start out with revenue this evening. First slide. So looking at revenue, as far as miscellaneous revenue, there's really no change from this year. I am working on negotiating increases with Cal and Gunner, but we have yet to come to an agreement. Every city was affected differently by COVID, so while keeping that in mind, we are trying to come to some sort of agreement that better suits all of us. As far as the insurance and private payments goes, it has increased from this year, and that number is based on an average monthly collection we receive in that line item, while still being a little conservative to make sure we hit that number. Forward, going into expenditures, this is strictly based off department needs. A needs assessment is conducted frequently with us. And from that needs assessment, the main thing that we had to focus on this year was more personnel. Currently, we operate with 2 full-time personnel per shift. Sometimes we have a part-time employee that we're supposed to have one every day, and that's a struggle that we face with the part-time position. It's most of our certified firefighters that come here to work part-time or full-time somewhere else, so they do good for first 3 months, and then that kind of starts slacking. So this year we had a huge struggle with that. Current operations this way are unsafe. And our call volume has continued to rise over the past several years, and on this next slide, I'll show you that rise. So starting at 2000, that's kind of hard to see. I apologize for that.
Ryan, before you go to that, when you're talking about current operations are unsafe, you're just talking about the building?
No, when we respond to incidents, the amount of personnel that we have. So and it's different for every incident that we face. So if we're out on the highway, for a motor vehicle accident, if you're on 75, you have a speed limit out there, 75 miles an hour, but most people go 90.
Yeah.
And so we find ourselves continuously blocking, using our ambulance as a walking vehicle while we're loading a patient in that ambulance. And so we want more personnel to be able to respond in a bigger unit, such as our engine, to block further up the road to prevent these vehicles from flying by so fast. And then another example would be, responding to a structure fire, says that his home is on fire, with the state mandates. I have to have a policy in place that shows I send at least two people in together. I can't just send one. And when I do that, I'm supposed to have 2 people on the outside. Okay, so, and so if something happens to those 2 people, we have a team that can go in and rescue them. So it's more or less based off the incidents that we respond to, the safety. So I apologize if that is hard to read, but from 2017 to what we're looking at getting this year, you're looking at a call volume increase of almost 400 calls a year. So that's pretty substantial. So in order to keep up with the growth and call volume, that is what we're at in the now. Can you go to the next slide? So for our expenditures, the only significant changes you will see within my budget is adding the 3 personnel to get to 3 full-time per shift, while still keeping the part-time Monday through Friday, we will revisit the way we structure that and come up with a better solution, a better way to operate that part-time person Wednesday through Friday. 3% raises for current personnel based off merit, just to stay competitive with the surrounding cities, so we can maintain our retention process. And that pretty much sums up my budget. Any questions?
How many full-time do you have right now?
Their total, if you include me, there's 7 of us full-time. We operate on a 24-hour on, 48-hour off shift, so, which creates an A, B, and C shift. So I have 2 guys on, they work 24 hours, and then they're off for 2 days before they come back. And then me, full-time, we work Monday through Friday.
Is there any possibility of counting on off-shift personnel to support an emergency?
I'm sorry.
Is there any possibility of counting on off-shift personnel to support you in an emergency? I understand the issue. We don't want to have people sitting around the firehouse for weeks with nothing.
Right.
But yet, when there is a structure fire,
Sometimes we will get some of our people that live close that come in, but some of my full-time, they don't live close enough to really make a difference.
Mr. Mayor, we have mutual aid agreements, so it's not like we're out there.
Right.
If he needs more people, he can radio and
Yes.
has the support he needs.
Normally with the structure fire, we will immediately begin calling for surrounding departments such as Anna, Gunner, Al, and so forth, and to get the resources that we need. So that is one of those situations.
Plus, if they already work a 24-hour shift, they would rather be off for a certain amount of hours before they take the call back to us. I think that'd be messy anyway, you need to know about them.
Typically, I only allow, I have a max. So if a full-time works 72 hours straight, they have to be off a certain amount of time. And we try not to ever hit that, but we have in the past due to our staffing workload. If multiple people get sick or something like that, sometimes we have no other choice in order to maintain operations.
We had a similar situation with the police department when I first arrived. We were understaffed, underpaid and all that kind of thing. And we're trying to address it again. When you add 3 personnel, that's a sizable investment. And we're doing it by not doing other things. And it's the right way to do it. And then we'll add as we can as we move forward. If revenue supports it next year, we'll continue to add. Or if we get a grant we keep applying for that helps offset the cost, we can move forward. We're taking a good step here.
Yes, this addition will help tremendously.
But you're still understaffed technically?
Well, we would-
Pretty good with the-
We could love to hire more, but I understand that's not feasible with our size city right now. That's why, with my strategic plan, I understand that, and it's a long-term plan that's frequently adjusted with the city's growth. So we can do that, because I know I'm not the only department that needs things.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Barnes.
Thank you. Mayor, council, basically oversight of the police department communication and force budget. As you can see, there's not much change in all 3 departments, very little change. Basically, where you're gonna see the increase in the police department is what y'all already voted on, was the in-car body cameras, or the body cameras in the in-car system. And you'll also notice just a slight increase in salaries, and that's just because of the fact that, if you remember right, we had staggered positions in the last 2 years, and now we're gonna be fully staffed. In communication, basically the overtime was increased just because of historically this year and last year, we went over budget, and that's A lot of that's due to virus, openings, vacation, some sickness that came around in our dispatch, and that has to be covered 24/7, so. Really not a lot of change in court, it actually has a decrease. And, it's pretty straightforward budget in all three. Any questions?
Well, Parks and Recreation is, the recipient of a balanced budget. We went back through and cut a lot of the wants off the list and got it down to our needs, in order to make our budget balanced. We will be buying a new lawnmower. We have a lot of grass to cut, and that stuff grows like crazy. We're gonna increase funding for fields and grounds maintenance. We just never really had enough money to keep our lawns green and our parks looking pretty, so we've increased the revenue there. Using our capital budget, using our parks dedication funds, we're gonna buy 12 park benches to be able to install around our city and in our parks, which is in keeping with the Parks Master Plan. And again, using that same funding source, we're gonna buy a new piece of maintenance equipment that will allow one person to do all the grounds upkeep for all our softball and baseball fields. One person can do it in a few hours for this new piece of equipment. Also does things like laser levels the fields so that we can get rid of the cooling and water and all those other issues. So that's what we're doing in Parks and Recreation.
Do we have any sizable revenue that comes in on parks?
No. So, we receive revenue from GASA to help offset the cost of our one part-time person, but that's really the only revenue that we receive.
Thank you.
We've applied for a grant, we hope to receive this year, but that whole grant process was put on hold with COVID. So we're taking it off. We'll do a budget amendment to remove it, so.
A targeted grant was in for a specific item?
For this park over here?
Behind us.
Yeah. If it happens, it'd be great. I have talked to them on the phone. It may get rekindled in September. If it does, and we're lucky enough to be the recipient of it, that'll be very helpful. And,
Thank you.
Senior Center is next. Again, basic utilities, insurance, building repair. That will be the recipient of our certified tax roll values. If that 28,000 grows, we're going to spend some money in our senior center. It needs paint, it needs furniture, it needs a roof on the building. It needs things, and we'll do that. So that's item number one on our to-do list for the senior center.
And same question here, are we getting any funding, revenue from senior center that's the county or
No, sir.
TCOG? I know at least knows it's there, I don't know if they provide any.
There is funding that we don't see directly that helps pay for food and things like that that supports the senior center, but it doesn't come to the city and it goes directly to them.
I see, thank you.
Justin cut and ran tonight, so I get to be Justin because of the increase in sales tax revenue. Our streets fund receives a almost 25% increase in funding in this upcoming year. They'll get $238,000 where they had $190,000 the previous year. They also have a fund balance of about $192,000 and change sitting in there, and they have a couple more months of revenue to collect this year. So we've identified today 6 projects, patch, pave, with asphalt, and I anticipate that list will grow, but we didn't have our estimates back. These are streets that we know we're going to address going forward, and I'm sure there'll be some more. This is in addition to where we're replacing water and sewer lines on Dallas and, yeah. So,
Which one?
Clement,
Dallas from Jefferson to Shreveport, and then Clement from John Douglas, or Tolson, basically, down to Park.
also as part of the Parks project, we're attempting to make the revenue fit. The concreting of Main Street from 121 all the way down to Van Alstyne Parkway, and then Van Alstyne Parkway to Preston, and then Preston back to Van Alstyne Parkway, and then Cooper Street would all be concrete as part of that project. So,
In the parking lot?
and the parking lot across the street. So we have a really aggressive plan on improving infrastructure, streets going forward. And that's kind of where we're spending our money and our time. People, getting the right people in place and making infrastructure improvements. And that sums up the general fund portion. Any questions?
I can only imagine the amount of effort that's gone into this, both from yourself and all the department heads, and it would be the entire staff. Thanks very much, not only for the presentation, but for all the work that you do it. To get us to this point. Jennifer, any comments from online visitors?
no.
How about timeline, Jennifer? Can we talk about next steps, please?
Yes, so as a part of item 5, would ask that you all pass a resolution proposing a tax rate as the one we discussed here today, keeping it flat, 0.584456. We will have one public hearing on the tax rate as well as the budget on August 25th here at 6 p.m. And then the final vote on the proposed tax rate and budget will be September 8th, which is our regular September meeting. So we'll just need one more special meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to propose a tax rate of 0.584456 cents per $100 of value for fiscal year 2020, 2021, tax year 2020, and set a public hearing. Public hearing will be Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. at Van Alstyne City Hall, located at 152 North Main Drive. The final vote on the proposed tax rate should take place on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. at Van Alstyne City Hall.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Is this a recorded vote?
Mhm.
This is a recorded vote to set the hearing. The public hearing and take the final vote.
We're going to do one at a time, right?
Yes,
Do a roll call vote?
yeah, that would be best.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it's time to vote, and we shall do so by roll call. Neil? Ms. Butler?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Ms. Parsons?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously 5-0. Okay,
If I might speak to the water rate that is proposed also, like Lane mentioned earlier, we have next steps for the water rate also. Our code requires that we notify our customers 30 days prior that we intend to raise the rate. So we will have to put a notice in the next water bill and give it 30 days before we bring an ordinance to you, which would probably have to be in October.
So we don't necessarily need to have a resolution on that right now.
No.
but
no action on that, but if we could kind of get an idea that at least the majority supports one of the proposals, then we can move forward with noticing our customers.
oh, I get it. So you don't have to have a resolution just to notify customers if we all, okay, I get what you're saying.
Can you just say a slight increase, or do we have to be there?
We'll tease you.
There will be other consumption.
We requesting any action?
No.
Like comments?
I guess if, does anyone prefer, do we prefer the alternate or the original? I think we're preferring the alternate, that's what I'm hearing.
Alternate. If anyone has any serious concerns with the alternate, now is a good time.
Then that's what one notice.
Okay, very good. Move to item 6 in our agenda. Anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
A motion to adjourn, is there a second? Mr. Jaska, a second, all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.